It is May 10th, 2018. We're headed up to Wisconsin in 1 week from today, actually. We'll leave for about a 2-day car trip up there for our spring 2018 sailing vacation on Lake Michigan. Though this year we're probably going to spend very little time on Lake Michigan. Most of it's going to be in Green Bay, exploring Door County and that sort of thing. So I've been doing a lot of preparation since our last trip up since September. A number of little boat projects and that sort of thing, updating the main sheet travelers, some little woodworking projects connected with that and other items on the boat, as well as preparing for this year's trip. And I've got all the charts out and everything. Went to the local, these charts I purchased last year for our trip up there, so they're a year old. I've just gotten everything up to date with the local notices to mariners and kind of started plotting out some of our trip. Last year's sailing relied heavily on electronics. I did have all the navigation equipment along with me. Recorded fixes on a regular basis and that kind of thing in case I had to start a DR plot if the electronics failed. But we had triple or quadruple redundancy on the electronics, so it was really not necessary. But I don't want my navigation skills to atrophy, so this year I'm going to do a little more actual hands-on stuff. So that's kind of why I've got all this junk out here, starting to put things together since we're leaving in only a week. This is, believe it or not, the smallest pile of stuff we have to go back up to the boat. So a whole bunch of stuff out in the garage, equipment, and moreover, gear to work on the boat. We've got a lot of work to do on the bright work when we get up there. I shouldn't say a lot of work, but just maintenance coats on the varnish and that sort of thing. We're going to spend about a week on the boat doing some maintenance. Again, working on the bright work, servicing winches, installing the new main sheet traveler, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Just a lot of stuff to do. So hopefully a week is enough. The boat's in warm storage up there right now. The mast is unstepped, so I also spliced a few lines. I'm not replacing any of the, or most of the running rigging this go around, just that necessary to what we had to do on the Traveler and so forth. So anyway, the plan this year is, or this trip anyway, we're going to go up again later this year, but this trip, our plan is to move up the western shore of Lake Michigan to probably to Sturgeon Bay, the ship canal over to Sturgeon Bay, probably spend a day or two there, and then start sailing around on Green Bay. Don't think we're going to go all the way down to Green Bay proper. I used to fly in there all the time with the airlines. I don't. I know there's stuff to do there, but the marinas and stuff are far from downtown. It's kind of the shallow end of the bay down there. I'm not sure what there is to see. We'll save that for another trip because there's other stuff we'd like to do. But once we get on Green Bay, rather than just sail up one shoreline or the other, I thought we'd kind of crisscross a little bit and visit various locations. Oconto, if we can get in there with the depths that they have. It sounds like it's dredged pretty good right now, but we'll check on that when we get up there before we make a decision. Back down to Little Sturgeon Bay just to have dinner one night, then probably up to Marinette, Menominee, back across the lake to, Egg Harbor or whatever. And then from there, we probably will just work up the shoreline through Strawberry Channel and everything, visit Fish Creek and Ephraim. I'm not sure if we'll visit both of those. If it's close enough walking distance, we may just stay in one and walk to the other. But anyway, spend a couple, 3-4 days in that area. And then from there, may move on up to Sister Bay, sail across to Cedar River, then back across to Washington Island. By this time, depending on what kind of weather we have and how much time if we've had to hunker down somewhere and wait out rough weather for a while, we may be running out of time, but I would like to get up to Escanaba, possibly Gladstone, into Big Bay Denok, and maybe spend a night or two at Little Snail Shell Harbor, rather. And then probably work our way through one of the passages and then back down the western shore of Lake Michigan. Depending if the weather's really nice, and we're doing short legs on this trip. We've never been up there this time of the year. We really don't know what to expect. So, but we know it's going to be cool on the water. So, not planning any real long legs on the water for that very reason, because I have a feeling it's going to be uncomfortable. But the hope is that by the time we're ready to come home, we can get through one of the passages here and then just head back down the west shore of Lake Michigan to our home port. So what I've been assembling here is all the materials for the trip, just mainly reference materials. Some of it is strictly reference material, like the light list. There's nothing to study in it. It's just a reference. Coast Pilot, on the other hand, I have read through that, kind of planning things with the Waterway Guide over here. The chart plotter apps and that sort of stuff, and obviously the nautical charts give virtually no detail about what's on land. So kind of found that these Delorme things are good for that. They're large-scale maps of an area, so you get an idea what the roadways, towns, and everything situated around the lake look like. Plus, it also has some topography, so somewhat useful in pilotage. If you're using landmarks for navigation, again, you get most of that stuff on the nautical charts, but when you're using improvised fixes and that sort of, or improvised references for fixes, the topography or topographic maps come in handy. So got that as a backup. And that's actually why I have the sextants out over here. I'm not going to do any celestial navigation on this trip. In fact, I haven't even purchased a 2018 nautical almanac yet, though I may get one and have it delivered to the marina before we leave. I don't think it'll show up here before we get here. So, but I've been laboring over which sextant to take with me. I prefer the half horizon sextant. Much easier for celestial navigation, in my opinion. I like it better anyway. I just prefer it. I tend to be kind of a masochist at times. that may be why I like it, but I just prefer it. The whole horizon works fine. I just don't, for celestial navigation, again, I just prefer the half horizon. But I think the whole horizon is the one I'm going to take because we're going to be using it to identify fixes on the water using pilotage, and that is measuring the angles between either land or water-based reference points to calculate a fix. So I don't want to haul them both up there, so that's probably why so that's the main reason. It's just much easier and much quicker to get those kind of fixes off the whole horizon sextant, at least in my experience. I probably will, if I get an almanac, take a few celestial sites, just sun and moon type stuff. I may not even take the Starfinder with me. I'm not, because I just don't think, we're not going to be, it's going to be short legs. We're not doing any long passages. We're going to be in sight of shore for a good portion of the time we're up there. So it's not going to be of any use whatsoever. But I may take a few sites just so I can come home and do the site reductions to keep my hand in it. So I'm pretty rusty on the celestial stuff right now. Some of the other odds and ends. The boat didn't have a bell on it when we bought it, so it's questionable in the coal rigs whether it's necessary for a boat our size anymore to have one anymore. I don't think it is, but I thought it'd be a good idea to have one. I just had this laying out because I just got this a couple of days ago. Thoroughly saturated it with shellac, so it should be somewhat soil and weather resistant, and it looks nice and salty when the bell's hanging on the boat. So that's what that's there for. PLB, we've got an EPIRB on the boat, but this is what I keep on the airplane as a supplement to the ELT. Since we're not going to be in the airplane, I figured it wouldn't hurt to take it with us. It can't be too safe. This is one of the woodworking projects I brought home with me. One of the access covers under the V-berth, or for the various compartments under the V-berth, happens to cover the inspection plate for the water tank up there. It apparently had leaked at some point, and the particular cover over that had started to delaminate and was looking pretty ratty. So I brought this one. It's a good one home from the boat to serve as a template for a new one. Here's the one to replace the one that came off of the over the access plate for the water tank, and I think it turned out pretty good. As did most of the woodworking projects that I did this year. Sometimes I surprise myself. As an aside, when we were in Pentwater last year, we were in a little antique shop and came across this porthole, just the porthole. And it was a pretty good deal. We're very landlocked, so nautical antiques are hard to come by, and when you find them, usually online, they're very expensive, and this is very reasonably priced. But the thing weighs about 60, 70 pounds, somewhere in that range, and we thought, what the hell are we going to do with that? I mean, you're not just going to stick it on a nail on the wall, though we thought it'd make kind of a nice picture frame. That's the boat, by the way. So just with materials I had on hand, with the exception of the brass nuts and some bolts and some varnish and some stain, I cobbled this thing together with some leftover hardwood flooring from another project. And I think it turned out pretty good. I also had some a little bit of oak on hand for a boat building project I had going on. The hatch cover I just showed you a minute ago was also some marine plywood left over from the same project. So yeah, just epoxied all the planks together, and turned out pretty good, I think. So anyway, I think that's about it. That's part of what we did in preparation. We've got a huge pile of stuff in the garage. It's all sorts of equipment that came with the boat, and I shipped home before we moved it up the Atlantic coast last year because I knew we weren't going to need it, and it's now going back to the boat because I realized we are going to want some of it. One happened to be a spinnaker. I thought it was a symmetrical spinnaker. I've never used one before, although we've had them on other boats. I perceive them as too much trouble, particularly for the type of sailing that we were typically doing, but it would be nice to have a real light air sail. So I unpacked that spinnaker this winter and looked at it, and it turns out it's an asymmetrical spinnaker, so it's definitely going back up with us. So, but the thing is huge, so it's going to take up a lot of space in the car. The padlock on that I had on the outboard motor last year froze up or something. We could not get it to open. And so we ended up hauling the outboard up to Wisconsin with us, intending to leave it there, but because we couldn't get the lock off of it, we just left it in the car while we were sailing up there, brought it back home with us. I cut the lock off this winter, and so we got to haul the outboard back up with us, along with a lot of other stuff. Most of it tools and materials related to the work we're going to do on the boat, but some equipment and that sort of thing as well. So anyway, nothing exciting about this, but kind of boring, and for friends and family who are watching this, at least you have an idea. I'll board to notify the Coast Guard to look for us. Again, we're going to be somewhere around Sturgeon Bay and the various passages into Lake Michigan, leaving Otter about the, what would that be, a week from Saturday, whatever that is. Today's May 10th, and returning 3 weeks later on or about that Friday, actually Thursday, because we're going to have a boat hauled out and let it sit on the hard until we return in September. So anyway, the Coast Guard can conduct any kind of a search if we don't show up by July or something. So there you go. Oh, yeah, some reading material. I'm not taking all this with me, but got some Great Lakes stuff. In addition to all my other interests, I tend to be kind of a history buff. I like to get some local perspective on history. The Stonehouse books I've already read. I'd read those years ago, but I thought those would be nice to have along because I bought used copies of them actually that I can leave on the boat because I thought it'd be fun to kind of look up various locations we're at and see if there are any ghostly reports in those areas that give you a little chill down your spine while you're sipping your rum in a lamp-lit boat in the evening. The rest of it is, I read one book by this author, Boyer, and it was actually pretty good. He wrote these books way back in the 60s, I think, and they're still in print, or you can still get them anyway. They're pretty good, so a lot of Great Lakes lore there. Anyway, the battery's about to go dead on this thing, so I'll let you go. Bye.